wanted to talk a little bit about underrated players. Throughout the history, now of course, my view is slanted towards my generation and the players I grew up watching, and even some of today's players. But I wanted to talk a little bit about underrated players because I think, just like I mentioned, and this kind of fed into my large market. I won't get into it, but where a player played, how many championships they won, that all kind of elevates them into their greatness. And I think there's a handful of players that because of their market, because of their demeanor, because of the way they are, they're underrated. I think they're just very underrated. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to go kind of maybe pick 5 players. I think I ended up picking like 7 because I struggled with it a little bit. But I wanted to kind of go back and forth with you, Eddie, and talk about some of these players in terms of like what your top 5 most underrated players are, what my top 5 most underrated players are. So I kind of wanted to start with you and pick one. And
let me go ahead
and order.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what. Let's. Do you have it positionless or do you have it by position?
No, I have it positionless. I didn't go with position because I just went for different reasons. So I've got a couple of players that are underrated because of one thing versus underrated because of another thing. That type of.
Okay, so it's good. We did a little different. So I went with the same theme as we did in the last segment where we picked the point guard, shooting guard. I did it that way, right? What I'm going to do is
I think I may be able to get that out of you.
Okay, so let me go ahead and tell you, rather than like the last segment where I picked my point guard, then you pick. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you my whole team, and then you tell me your whole team after that. But the difference here is what I'm going to do is rather than revealing who I picked, I'm going to give you some of their accolades to see if you can guess who that player is. All right. So at point guard, and by the way, the criteria that I chose here, these are players that are underrated when compared against like players at that same position that are probably considered better than them, but their stats are very similar, and maybe the market that they played for had an influence. All right, but some of these players that I'm picking, a lot of them are Hall of Famers. Actually, all of them are Hall of Famers. So that's
I have some that are not.
Say it again.
I have some that are not Hall of Famers.
Okay, so
I'll tell you what. When I take a guess at yours, I'll just give you mine.
Okay, that's cool.
I don't have the accolades, the background, that type of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm going to do that. Yeah, let's just do that. So okay, the point guard. I think you're going to get this one, man. So this guy played 19 seasons for the same team, and believe it or not, this guy played 17 seasons every freaking game, man. Can you believe that? Nobody in this freaking era is doing that. We're all talking about like load management times right now. This player did not do that, right? This guy's a 10-time All-Star. Led the league in assists for 9 straight seasons. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yes, I do.
NBA record of 15,806 assists and 3,256 steals. Leaders in both of those categories. Gold medal winner in 1992 and in 1996. So he was on the original Dream Team. And you know how they dominated, right? So this guy is a Hall of Famer. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, he liked to deliver the mail to a certain mailman.
Exactly.
Yes.
Gonzaga's finest, John Stockton.
Yes.
Honestly, he's probably, in my opinion, the most underrated player of all time. Honestly, to me, okay? Because you ever watch that Dream Team documentary when they were kind of going through all how all the practices, kind of the behind the scenes conversations, that even when the practice between Kobe and Jordan, they were kind of competing against each other and stuff. Wait, I just said no, it was not Kobe, it was Magic and Jordan. So but anyway, John Stockton was the guy that was walking around town. And nobody knew the hell
Nobody knew who he was. I remember that.
Nobody knew who he was. And he was wearing the Dream Team shirt, and then, he was kind of like, I'm part of the Dream Team. I'm this guy. And nobody freaking recognized him. It was all about Charles Barkley and Jordan. I mean, those guys took the show, right? John Stockton, to me, is the most underrated player of all time, the most underappreciated player of all time. Only the people that played with him understand how good that guy was.
Yeah.
But the new school right now, they'll look him up and like, oh, come on, this little white guy from Gonzaga, come on. No, that dude was a beast, man. He could shoot.
He's the Greg Maddux of the NBA, bro.
Yeah, man, he was unbelievable, man. He was a scrappy player too, man. So that's why I picked, right?
So when you say underrated in this context,
yes,
you're saying in terms of the youth today, in terms of recognition.
No, I'm just saying, when you compare like other people at that position, there's other names that kind of stick out for a lot of people, right? As far as the best point guards of all time, they'll mention like Magic. They'll mention Jason Kidd. They'll mention like Steph Curry. Gail Goodrich, whoever, right? All these other players, that are at the same position, but a lot of people forget about John Stockton. How good that guy was.
I agree. I agree. He is arguably the second best point guard in the history of the NBA.
Okay.
Behind Magic, you could argue that he is.
All right. I agree. All right. So let me go ahead and give you my next guy, shooting guard. Okay, this guy was Rookie of the Year in 1989. He was a 5th overall pick, 6-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA second team. He's considered one of the best shooters in NBA history, as well as one of the best defenders at this position. He is a Hall of Famer, and this is where I think you're going to know who he is. Widely known as the one defender that Jordan just hated going up against.
I know.
In matchups.
The Rock.
Exactly. The second member of the infamous Run TMC. No, not Run TMP. Run TMC. The original, right? Mitch Richmond of the Kansas State, right? He was the 5th overall pick by the Golden State Warriors. He only played for 2 seasons for the Warriors, and yet he's legendary in the lore of Golden State Warriors history. He is considered just that guy, man. And he's still only played for 2 seasons, and people just adore him here, right?
I was so mad. Billy Owens, I hate you wherever you are out there. You took my Mitch Richmond away.
And you know what? And this is considered Don Nelson's greatest regret. He said this is one of his greatest regrets, that he got rid of Mitch Richmond. And we all know why, right? He became a Hall of Famer elsewhere, had the best years over at Sacramento Kings. But at least he didn't go too far from Golden State. So
by the way, I had him on my list as well.
All right, cool. All right, so the small forward. I don't know if you're going to get this one, but I think if I describe it in a way that you'll get it. I'm going to try and see if I can get away with it without telling you until the very end. Okay, this guy was considered a serious scoring machine, like probably the original scoring machine. Honestly, he was drafted by the New Jersey Nets in 1978 and was considered the 10th leading scorer in his rookie season in 1978. He was a resilient player, mainly because early in his career he had battled with substance abuse, and he also actually had an ACL injury when he played for the third team that he left. Because he got drafted by the Nets, then he went to the Utah Jazz, and then he went to this third team, and then after that third team, he went to this other team, and that's where he had this ACL injury. But that's where he's widely known as the best player because of that team that he played for.
I got you.
And then, once he recovered from his injury from his knee, he came back as a Washington Bullet and actually became the third leading scorer, at 28.4 points per game. And he was third behind Jordan. I forgot who the second guy was. Four-time All-Star, 2-time NBA first team, scoring champion in 1985. He was also the NBA Comeback Player of the Year in 1980 and 1981 when he was dealt to. Who is it? He was dealt to?
Not the Warriors.
Yes, he was dealt to the Warriors from Utah. Do you know who this player is?
No, I thought, okay. I thought you were talking about Bernard King.
That is what I'm talking about.
Okay, all right, okay.
Bernard King.
Yeah, he came to the Warriors, then went to the Knicks.
He went but he was dealt from the Utah Jazz to the Warriors, and then from the Warriors he went to the Knicks, and they dealt him to the Knicks for Michael Ray Richardson and a draft pick.
Yes,
That's what they got in return for Bernard King. And then Bernard King became this unbelievable scorer in New York, man. So
that was soapbox moment. That was the first time where I experienced the East Coast media bias, because I love Bernard King as a Warrior.
Oh, dude, I love that.
I thought he was fantastic.
Unbelievable.
And when he went, this happened twice to my Warriors. It happened with Bernard King, and it happened with Tim Hardaway.
Tim Hardaway and Mitch
Richmond. The minute they went to the East,
Yes.
All
The East.
all the media acted as if they discovered these two guys. And I'm
Yes.
like, no, bro. These guys were freaking balling long before you guys found them.
Yes.
And this is where I'm like, the bias is real. Because I know who the hell Bernard King is, and I love Bernard King. That dude was a gamer.
He was unbelievable.
I mean, he's a Knicks legend. You know?
He is.
Yeah.
He was doing that with the Warriors, but he only played with the Warriors for 2 years.
I know.
Again, so I picked two guys back to back that played for the Warriors for 2 years, and yet they're still regarded in the lore of the Warriors, right?
Correct.
And it shows you how crappy the franchise the Warriors were prior to this current dynasty because we held on to players that only played for us for 2 years. But anyway, I digress.
Exactly.
So let's go to the power forward. So here, this one, dude, when I looked at this guy's stats, I'm surprised this guy's underrated. Unbelievable. He's already been mentioned in the previous segment, but wasn't on the list, but someone that we should have put on the list, all right? That already gives you who it is. All right. He was the number 1 pick in 1997 draft. He's a 2-time league MVP, 3-time finals MVP, 10-time NBA All-Star, 5 times NBA champion. You already know who this is.
I know who this is.
19-year NBA career. And believe it or not, this guy didn't pick up a basketball until he was 14 years old. He was actually training to be an Olympic swimmer in the Olympics. He actually came from the Virgin Islands. I misspoke. I thought he came from the Bahamas. I knew it was some kind of tropic area. When in a past podcast, I mentioned he came from the Bahamas. He actually came from the Virgin Islands. This guy's the big fundamental.
And that's Tim
Duncan. And he's underrated, man. I mean, when I look at his accolades,
I have Tim Duncan.
I was like, oh my God, how is this guy underrated? Because a lot of people think about Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, right? You take a name. Those guys are typically the guys that kind of stand out as a best power forwards, usually for a lot of people, right? But this guy, I mean, I looked at his stats and I looked at all his accolades. I'm like, oh my God, this guy was a beast. And, you know, I got to tell you, man, when I watched him growing up, I wasn't really like impressed by him because he's just so slow moving. He had that bank shot, right? And I'm like, what's the big deal about this guy, right?
Yeah.
But he was a big deal after you look back at him, you know, kind of the same way I looked at Larry Bird. You know, I thought, what's the big deal about this guy? But then after I look back, holy crap, these guys were hella good. So anyway,
stop them. That's the big deal.
That is the big deal. So Tim Duncan, the big fundamental, is my power forward. And then my last guy, because I know we got to get to your list, man. So we definitely are way over time on this one. But anyway, we're bringing you good content, audience. Hope you appreciate it. So, all right, the center. Here we go. Here's the center. Drafted in 1987. He was a league MVP 1 year. He's a 10-time All-Star, a 2-time NBA champion, also part of the original Dream Team. Okay. He was a scoring champion in 1994 when he scored 71 points in the final game to edge out Shaq. He's only one of 4 players to have a quadruple double in his career. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Robinson.
David Robinson, the Admiral. And you know what's interesting about this guy, man? He was drafted in 1987. And then they sat on him for 2 years because he had to go serve for the Navy for 2 years. So then he came in the league 2 years after he got drafted and then was Rookie of the Year, you know? And, dude, he's another guy that I look back and I'm like, holy crap, this guy was hella good. But because there's something to be said about the small market thing. And that's something that unfortunately we're not going to get to for the next segment. Because
this feeds right into it.
This feeds right into it. So for those of you out there, you know, just be patient. We're going to talk about this, but it dovetails right into what, you know, Twan wanted to talk about. We're going to talk about that, and I'll summarize, you know.
Well, imagine if Robinson and Duncan played for the Knicks.
I know. Oh, man.
Think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we talk about overrated, and I don't want to piss off my Knicks fans out there. Right. But, you know, they had Ewing, which I thought was severely overrated.
Yeah.
And you couldn't stop hearing about Ewing.
Yeah.
You know, and so
they hype up their players, man.
Yeah.
They hype up their players, man. We know the media out there, man. We know the media. You know,
benefits of a large market.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my list, man. So it's in summary, it's John Stockton, Mitch Richmond, Bernard King, Tim Duncan, and David Robinson as my all-time underrated 5 of all time. So tell me your list, man.
Sure. So my list. So you went with accolades.
Yes.
I went with kind of cult favorites.
Okay.
Players that maybe time has forgotten, but players that, man, are tattooed on my brain for one reason or another. So the first guy, and again, I'm going to skip over the players because I had Tim Duncan on mine. I had Mitch Richmond on mine. So I'm going to leave those two alone. The first guy, man, I thought he was flashy. I never watched Pistol Pete Maravich play, but I can imagine that it was like this guy, and that's White Chocolate, Jason Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I love that dude. I don't know, like, how much – he's one of those guys that when – hey, if you're young, if you're under 25, jump on YouTube, go watch his highlights.
Oh, man, he's incredible.
There's no one in the NBA.
Jason Williams. Yeah, Jason Williams. White
Jason
Chocolate.
Williams. Yep. There's no one in the NBA today that does what that guy did. That dude was incredible. And so for that simple sense, just from the excitement factor, the way that he, we were talking about passing earlier. And, one of the reasons that I liked Magic is Magic not only was a great passer, but he passed you open. He put you in positions where passes weren't there. And that's to me, that was the biggest difference between Stockton and Magic. Was Stockton did the correct pass every time. But it was a fundamental play. Magic took risks. He kind of led you a little bit. He's looking to the left and throwing to the right, and so he's doing, and Jason Williams was in that mold. That guy, I mean, I remember he'd do this behind the back where he hit it with his opposite elbow.
With his elbow, yeah.
And then
that was an all-star game. He was passing it to Rafe LaFrance of the Denver Nuggets. And he didn't dunk it.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he didn't dunk it, man. He got fouled and he couldn't dunk it, man. That was such an awesome freaking play. Yeah. Yep. Look it up, guys. YouTube.
Yeah, look it up. So the next two are two, what I would call, I don't want to say warrior killers, but these are two guys that every time we had to face them, I would get nervous because if the clock was coming down, these guys always killed us. And these were two guards, and that is Sam Cassell and Rod Strickland.
Oh, dude, that guy was unbelievable. Before Kyrie Irving, there was Rod Strickland.
Yes.
Rod Strickland was, to me, considered the best finisher of all time to me until Kyrie Irving showed up.
Yeah. No, Rod Strickland was a fantastic point guard. I mean, He could score, he could pass, you're right. He was Kyrie before Kyrie. He had some injury. I believe he had a little bit of passion with the puff, which was a kind of frowned upon back in those days, right? It wasn't as hunky-dory as it is today. So he was kind of like on the outs. And he played primarily his career in Portland, which, again, small market team, right? So those are two guards. All right. I had Hakeem Olajuwon. I think I don't want to get into that, but I think Hakeem Olajuwon is severely underrated. I mean, I think if I had to rate best centers of all time, I mean, it's Kareem 1 and Olajuwon 1A. I mean, it's that close in my mind. I think Hakeem was just a fantastic player. Speaking, talking about Tim Duncan not playing basketball till later in your career, Hakeem was another one. He was a huge soccer player.
Played soccer player. He was a soccer player. He was a goalie.
He had magical feet, bro. That dude had incredible feet. I still remember when Shaq, his rookie year with Orlando, they went to the finals.
Yep.
And then, again, folks, if you want to see Shaq get embarrassed, bring up those finals. Because Olajuwon, the Dream Shake, Shaq had no shot. And, I mean, Olajuwon should be referred to as, I think, easily in the top 10. I think we could argue in the top 5 greatest of all time. I think Olajuwon was that great.
There's nobody else that could replicate his footwork in the NBA. I mean, there's a reason why he's hired by a lot of NBA teams to be a consultant to their big men to try and get them to kind of learn some of those moves, right? I would say the closest guy to him from a down low post move, kind of like you don't know what he's doing, was remember Kevin McHale? Kevin McHale was the exact same way, man, but he did it differently. He did it way differently. Like he did a lot of pivoting.
He did it more in a small spot.
Yeah, but he did a lot of pivoting, this kind of fake pivot, whereas, Olajuwon did this kind of, I don't know what he did, man. He was just like shaking, and he left people in the dust, man. But yeah, that dude, good pick, man, because he is underrated. He is a Hall of Famer, but he's underrated in a lot of people.
I'd be curious what Olajuwon could do in today's game, because I think he had a pretty decent jump shot. It wasn't, he didn't have range, but I think he could definitely have been a player that could impact today's game.
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah,
For sure.
for sure.
For sure.
All right,
Yeah.
and then my last guy, 3-time MVP, was known for missing hoops on purpose so he can get his own rebound and then score it again.
Moses Malone.
That's right, Moses Malone.
Yep.
Moses Malone.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And I have him because no one ever talks about Moses.
You know, and I think he might have been the very first guy. You know, I might be misspeaking here, but he's the first guy I remember that came out of high school.
I believe you're correct. Yeah.
He's the first guy that I heard of that came out of high school.
Yeah, I thought it was Daryl Dawkins, but you might be right.
No. Moses Malone came right out of high school, man. Yeah. I remember he was one of the first guys, if not the first.
Yep, so, and that dude, he was good when he was young, and when he got older, dude, he was like a wooden cement, like a cement block. You couldn't move. Like that dude was just boom, station there, get his rebounds, miss 2, get 2 rebounds, score a basket. That dude was a beast. So I love Moses Malone. I mean, for those of you that don't know, you know, obviously the Warriors have always been my team, but my love team was the 76ers back in the day. Dr. J, Maurice Cheeks, Andrew Toney, Mike Ivaroni,
Bobby Jones,
Moses Malone, Daryl Dawkins, Bobby Jones. Yeah, I love that team.
Yeah, they were scrappy, man.
Yeah, and wherever I could watch them, you know, I would. We had Eddie and I had a conversation earlier about whether or not Dr. J was overrated, and he probably was a little bit, you know, given kind of today's athlete and what they can do. But when I was 6 years old, I mean, I was going to be 6'6", 6'7". I was going to be Dr. J's. I was going to mimic Dr. J. That's what I wanted, you know, and obviously it didn't come to fruition because I'm nowhere near 6'6", but I love Dr. J and I love those teams. And Moses, I just remember he was the anchor of that squad, and you know, low post galore. Something that, you know, I think for us old heads, some things we lost when the 3-point line was introduced.
Yeah.
You know, some of that skill set, some of that low post
skills. Yep. Yeah. Hey, but that's, you know, Jokic just brought that back a little bit too. You know,
a little bit. Yeah.
So.
They're more like a hybrid now where they have to play out, but they can play out. But
exactly. Right on, bro.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these 2 boxes.